right, welcome into the final yard here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. We're not going to talk about sponsors or anything else on this particular program. We're going to get right to it. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Louis Sung. You can follow him at Louis D. Sung. We got Chris Early. You can follow him at the Earl007. We did a pregame show, myself, Lewis, and Eric. We all picked the Ravens, but we all picked them in a close game. We did not think this necessarily was going to happen. We'll get into some of the reasons why. 56-19, Dolphins outclassed, just outclassed, outplayed, outcoached, outphysicaled. Fewer mistakes by the other side. Didn't look like they belonged on the same field for most of this game. And when we've talked about them against the better teams in the league, you can say Philadelphia. Okay, a lot of bad calls in that game. Had some chances. Chiefs game, Tyreek makes a mistake before the half. They had a drive to potentially tie or win at the end. So you're like, okay, maybe that Buffalo game early in the season where they got outclassed, outplayed, outcoached, all the rest of that, maybe that was an anomaly. Now here we are. It wasn't an anomaly. And I know Lewis is going to want to get into that, but I want to go through some of the sort of the bigger picture stuff here, and then we'll rant away and let you guys rant also. For this one. I mean, I'll a couple of things on this. First thing, obviously, Lamar Jackson was brilliant, but they made it easy on him. There was no pressure. There were more coverage busts in this game than I could remember in the last 5 or 6 games. I don't know what the hell happened on some of those. We'll try to touch on some of it. On the offensive side, Tua made the one terrible throw right before the half, which that's again in these kind of games, you can't have the mistake. Like we talked about that before the game because it's like tennis. It's like once you're going back and forth, and once the other team breaks serve, if that team is good, they put it on you. And then we're going to talk about some of the injuries where Xavier Howard early, but Bradley Chubb late. Second time this season that they've lost a guy. It looks serious, non-contact injury again. That they've lost a guy who was playing at an elite level at a critical position when the game was essentially over. Same thing happened on the other side when the Dolphins were winning in New Jersey, and now it happens today. I know Lewis is warming up here. I want to go to you, Chris, on this first. That first half, did you get the sense that they could play with these guys at some point before the thing got away?
It started fast. And I was thinking just before we came on the show, what maybe things would have been a little bit different if Tyreek Hill catches that touchdown pass. Does that change things? I don't know. But I mean, they were running the ball well. They were throwing the ball well. It seemed like it may turn into a shootout, but you kind of expected that anyway. I didn't expect this to be necessarily a defensive slugfest, especially with the guys that they had out. But yeah, I mean, it started out like Miami can hang with these guys. They can play. And at one point it was 14-10. And you thought, well, it's kind of, it's not out of hand. And then it got out of hand. So I don't know. I will say this, that I think some of the play calling has to change. And I know some of it has to do with the offensive line. And I know Liam Eichenberg went down for a little bit, came back in the game, and they're on backups. But at some points, you have to be able to trust your offensive line to run something other than these little quick hitting screen passes, quick hitting passes. And I know Miami has been very successful all season throwing the ball quickly in various ways, but these type of defenses, the defenses you're going to see in the playoffs are going to be able to adjust to that. And you need to be able to call some plays where you can maybe run a play action. Miami was running the ball. They couldn't stop Devon Achane at all in the first quarter. Well, you hand the ball or you fake the handoff to him, you turn around, you drop back and throw it. And they're not doing that because I just don't think they trust the offensive line at this point. So, that's that would be where I want to see a change, is because I think once Baltimore realized they're not going to do anything other than these quick hitting passes, they're not going to do that much outside of a few big plays. They were able to clamp down, and that's where I think the game changed.
I want to go through these things quickly with you, Lewis. Then I know you have a larger point to make here. Tyreek Hill's been unbelievable this year. But in 3 games against quality opponents, he's made big mistakes. The Philadelphia game, the Kansas City game, and this game. Um, you can't I don't know that the result would have been different. You can't drop that pass. You you just can't. I mean, things do look different in the first half if he makes that catch. Uh, Defensively, again, the coverage bus. I don't know what Eli Apple was doing on a couple of those. There's no safety help on some of them. I don't know if they were supposed to be in zone or man, but nothing in terms of the secondary. Nobody in the secondary made any impact in this game whatsoever. And a pass rush. Again, Bradley Chubb gets hurt at the end of this game, but we didn't see impact from Van Ginkel. We didn't see impact from some of the guys we've seen from lately. Nobody made a damn play. Like nobody. This is the second time in Lamar's career he's got a perfect rating against the Dolphins, 158.3. This is the second time that this has happened. I know you want to go off on it, so go off on it.
I'm not gonna scream and holler about this whole thing. I'm not. But I'm just gonna go ahead and point out that I said earlier this season, after another loss to the Buffalo Bills, after the loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, to the loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, this strength beats speed every time. Every time. And once again, this season, Miami faced up against a team with all their speed and all their finesse and all of their ability to get over the tops of defenses and to be able to make incredible things happen with their raw talent and raw speed. At the end of the day, when you run into a dude who's 10 times your size and is bigger and stronger than you, you can run as fast as you want. He will put an arm out, stop you in your tracks, body bag you, and that's the end of the day. That's all there is to it. Miami is not big and strong enough. They aren't. This game was over before the half was over. Before the first half was over, the game was over. There was not going to be any miraculous Tua Tagovailoa antics this time, because even in that game last season, you could tell that there were some certain things that it looked like they could do, but they just were falling a little bit short on, but it was never as dominant as it was before. This game, from beginning to end, you knew things were going to go sour because the Ravens were moving the ball without even having to blink. They were scoring touchdowns at will. All Lamar had to do was chuck it over the top, and there was a dude wide open, and nobody else was near him the entire time. There's no question about it. And I'll say, and I tweeted this out too, and I don't know how many people are even going to acknowledge it because people are too pissed off to be on Twitter right now. Lamar Jackson is the best player in the NFL. Doesn't matter what position. He's better than Patrick Mahomes. He is. Because we thought, oh, just contain him. Don't let him use his legs. Did you see him having any trouble throwing the football? No, not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. He can find wide open guys. He can find guys who are not wide open. He can run for 30 yards at the drop of a hat. He can do more with less weapons than anybody else in this league. Because even Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't have weapons. He doesn't look as unstoppable as he used to. Lamar Jackson continues to be Lamar Jackson. There is no question who is the best player in football right now. So he deserves the MVP above everybody else. But the bigger point here, and this is where I keep getting frustrated with the whole thing, Miami doesn't know how to play physical football teams. They have no answer for physical football teams. Teams that punch you in the mouth, laugh at you while you're bleeding, and then punch you again while you're laying there on the floor. That's exactly what Baltimore did. By the way, that last touchdown pass for Tyler Huntley or whoever the heck their backup is, I don't even remember who it is anymore. That is what everybody's like, oh, it's classless. That's physical football. That's bully football. That's the Ravens. That's the Bills. That's any physical football team would have done the exact same thing. I'm not surprised. This is their DNA. This is what they are. This is why they're good every year, because they want to punch you in the mouth. They want to prove they're bigger and stronger. Miami not getting a pass rush. Baltimore's offensive line is one of the best in football. They're big, they're strong, they're physical. They let Lamar Jackson do whatever he wants back there. They don't have issues with that. Their defense, big, strong, physical, punch you in the mouth, and they are going to make you suffer for it. What's the difference? Nothing has changed because, quite frankly, at this point, it's going to be the Ravens and 49ers in the Super Bowl, and is a very distinct possibility the Ravens will win again. Tell me where I'm wrong. I dare you to tell me where I'm wrong.
I think we saw the Super Bowl last week. Honestly, the more I was watching this game, and again that game, we got a comment in here from Lawrence about picking the Ravens Niners game to be close. I did pick that to be close. I think it could be close the next time, but it wasn't close last week. And I think Baltimore's the best team in the league right now. I do, but I don't excuse Miami for this performance. Even so, Like both can be true. Baltimore can be really good, which they are, and Harbaugh teams tend to get better as the season goes on. Look, they were without a lot of people today too, and we'll talk about some of the guys that were out for the Dolphins. Some of those who didn't play well still looked hurt, etc. It didn't help to lose Howard early in the game. Obviously, Chubb, that was not a factor because that happened late in the game. But Baltimore was without a ton of guys. I mean, Chris, you mentioned it. I mean, defensively, they were. I mean, they were picked. They had 4 starters out. Like, so this wasn't even their full group either. And I think the point you're making, Lewis, is what scares people now is that you get Buffalo coming in. They didn't play particularly well today. I watched some of that game. They were Josh Allen was awful in the first half. They won anyway because the Patriots are terrible. But this is Buffalo season. All Buffalo wanted this whole year. Get us to the final game of the year with a chance to still win the division with everything that they've dealt with this season. And here they are. And here's the problem. If you lose that game Sunday, you know where you're likely going? Up to Buffalo right after that. I mean, that's the most likely outcome. And I picked, Chris, I had the Dolphins 11-6 before this year. And people were like, oh, that's optimistic. Now 11-6 looks bad because it means that you squandered an opportunity to give yourself the home games that you're going to need. I'll ask you this. Do you have faith in this team with what you saw today? Not McDaniel's best performance either. Okay. With what you saw today, we don't know Howard's status now. I'm not assuming Waddle's going to be back next week. I think Mostert will be. Chubb's injury looked bad. You're obviously not getting Jalen Phillips back, so you're without your 2 best pass rushers potentially for the rest of this thing. Do you have any faith in them to beat the Bills next week?
Faith, no. Optimism, maybe. I'll try to glean a little bit of positivity from this game that I can. Is that the Dolphins went into Baltimore and put up more yards than the San Francisco 49ers put up against the Ravens at home. So, to your point, the Baltimore Ravens are probably the best team in the league right now, and they look like they're a Super Bowl champion type team. So this was going to be a tough out for Miami regardless. But we saw another team in their own building play a lot worse of a game than Miami did. Miami had 3 turnovers. They had 5 turnovers against the 49ers. So it's just this team, the Baltimore Ravens, are a hot team right now, and Miami just happened to run into it. Now, as far as Buffalo goes, I think playing at home will help Miami. I think we saw from I don't think they're as strong defensively as they were in week 4. Obviously, Matt Milano is out for the year. I saw this week that their defensive tackle, Daquan Jones, was set to return. I don't know if he played today or not. But they have I can't remember how they've looked over the past couple of weeks as far as their scores and things, but they beat Dallas and Josh Allen threw the ball 10 times or something. I didn't see what his numbers were today, but I know they're leaning heavily on the run game. I would take Miami in that regard. I think even with Chubb out and with Phillips out, I think they can stop the run. The problem there is Josh Allen tends to have terrible games against most people except Miami. So I don't know what that's going to look like. The good news is you've got Jalen Ramsey in there, whereas you didn't have him before. And he's a little bit more of a game changer than what X is currently in his career. So I think when you add that to it, and you've got Eli Apple is still there, and I know he played poorly today, but I would trust him playing outside over doing what you did with Kohu last time over Cam Smith, who obviously hasn't got many reps this year at all. So I said this in another thread that it almost felt like to me that this season was going to come down to a catharsis moment where Miami has to beat Buffalo to win the division. It's kind of like the Ric Flair, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. And I think it always kind of felt that way to me. And I was hoping that it wouldn't. And I was hoping that the Patriots, after seeing how today was going, could step up and end that. But you take your lessons from this. You realize that you played a better team, probably the best team in the league, that even the best team in the other conference didn't have a chance against. So, looking at it, the worst thing today was the injuries. I mean, the loss. I don't care what the final score was. The loss, I kind of chalked us up to a loss anyway. I was hoping it wouldn't be, but whatever. But yeah, they've got to stick to what they're doing. And to Lewis's point about physicality, I agree. You've got to be more physical, particularly in the trenches. But with the backup offensive line in there, and I know you're going to have a backup center all the rest of the year, and a backup guard, whatever that is. If Hunt comes back, we don't know. So they've just got to be able to run the ball. And they did well today in spurts. But if you want to beat Buffalo next week and you want to win the division and get that home playoff game, stop the little screen passes, stop the cute stuff, run the ball. Get those guys. Look, I don't know how big Lester Cotton is. I don't know how big Robert Jones are, but those are big kids, right? They're some big, as we say around here, big youngins. Let them lean on some bodies and just push these guys. And they couldn't do that today. I don't know. I saw that one defensive tackle for Baltimore look like he was about 500 pounds. He's just a big dude, but that's what you got to do. And it doesn't matter how pretty it looks, just get the win. So, we'll see.
Well, I think Lewis, go ahead.
Duke, you know I love you, right? You're my guy.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with so much of what you just said. Oh my God. Number one.
With what part?
Number one, the whole don't care about the final score thing, chalked it up to a loss. I care about the final score. If the Dolphins had been competitive, if it had been 56-50, I would have been better about the whole thing. I would have been mad at the defense, obviously, but I would have felt better. If the score had been 19-20 and Ravens won, I would have cared a little bit less and I wouldn't have been so upset about this. This was a shellacking, complete and utter domination by the other team. I cannot dismiss that. I can't. I could look at it and say, okay, this was the Eagles game. It didn't seem fair in Miami's favor, and the Dolphins lost by like one score. The Chiefs game, one or two things went wrong, but we were in the game the whole time. From beginning to end in this game, Miami had no shot. No shot. And you could tell. You felt it the entire way. You knew that they were going to lose. And you knew they were going to lose badly. It was just a question of how badly are they going to lose. Now, here's where I both am anti-Tua and both pro-Tua at the same time, because it's a very, very difficult discussion to have right now. This is the era of the running quarterback. I said it in the pregame show. I see people talking about it, like Poltergeist. Tua's lack of athleticism shows loudly in games like this. Yes, correct. Tua couldn't run. Tua doesn't run. It's not his game. And so that factor of it was missing the entire way. With Lamar Jackson, you always have to be wary of the fact that he could run for 20 yards at a time and not even blink. That's something that is in his favor. Now, to say that it's Tua's fault the Dolphins lost this game, because there are people in the comments talking about this, talking about Tua's a bum and all that nonsense. Tua's not a bum. He threw at least 2 touchdowns today that were dropped by his receivers. One by Tyreek, which was, God, how did you manage to drop that? He had it in his hands and you just somehow just not, like you uncaught the football. You caught it and then you uncaught it and nobody touched you the entire way. So that's one. That was when momentum really started to shift in Baltimore's favor. Then the touchdown in the third quarter, the Chase Claypool, that went in the crapper as well. So at some point, you see the Ravens receivers, though, fullbacks, making one-handed catches. Patrick, what's it? Roquan Smith, a linebacker, one-handed interception from off of Tua Tagovailoa. All these Ravens just coming in here, making trick plays, catching passes out of thin air. Miami can't even catch the routine stuff. They can't. And people talking about elite quarterbacks overcome mishaps. Yes, if you run the football yourself. That's what I was talking about. 3 quarterbacks can put the team on their back and win for you. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. No one else can do that.
Here's my issue with the running quarterback situation is What has Lamar done this season that he has not done the last 3 seasons?
Nothing.
No, he has.
What has he
It's
done? He's throwing the
it,
football.
it's week 17 and he's still playing. And so for all the crap that people say, well, if Tua stays healthy, well, if Lamar stays healthy, and it's the same thing that's the issue you get with quarterbacks that like to run. Now, there's a difference between scrambling quarterbacks that kind of, somebody like, we'll use the guy Dak Prescott because it was mentioned on Hard Knocks. Is he's a guy that likes to scramble, but he's not necessarily a guy that's going to run for plays. Problem with that is that's how you get your quarterback hurt.
It's the same thing in my book, Duke. Whether he scrambles or it's a design run, it's the same thing.
I'm not a fan of that because that's how you get your quarterback hurt. And so let's say they go into week 18 and they're probably not going to play now, but let's say something happened today and he breaks contain, he gets out on a run and his leg twists the wrong way and gets hit and suddenly he's out for the year. So
that's physical football.
Well, again, the pocket quarterback is always going to have a longer career and be a better player than the guys who tend to run the ball. And the reason Lamar is so good is because he did what he did today. He stood in the pocket and threw the ball. So, credit to him for, Lamar got hurt in the pocket. But again, guys who run, they take extra hits. I don't want my quarterback taking hit. And look, I saw that play where Tua is 4th down and whatever, and he slid. Still got hurt on the play.
Yeah, but hold on. You know how he got hurt on the play? Because the Ravens decided to do what they do, beat the crap out of other players, get away with it, by the way. And he was already down, and they slammed his shoulder. Which luckily, by the way, fortunately, Tua says he was on the stand. It's like his shoulder's just a little sore. But
but see again. I don't care for him sliding at that point. It was 4th down. Yeah.
So you wanted to drop his shoulder and take a harder hit on his shoulder?
Oh no, absolutely not. Just slide and lose the down and give the ball back. You're losing the game at that point. Your extra 3 yards that you're going to try to fight for is not going to make a difference. If it was a 1-point game, that's a different story. Again, I just think that it's going to be hard for Miami to play the physical brand of football with the guys that they have right now on the offensive line. The defensive line could do better. I thought Zach Sealer played a pretty good game today. He got the sack. He forced the fumble.
Wilkins didn't really show up today.
Neither did anyone else, though, Ethan. Bradley Chubb didn't show up, and Giggle didn't show up. Nobody showed up.
No, I know. Nobody on the defense was impactful. See, here's the thing. I kind of split between the two of you guys here, and it's not a cop out necessarily. I guess you may read it that way. I understand what Lewis you're saying about a quarterback being able to make something happen when nothing is there, and I get it. That sometimes when things are unscripted for Tua, it's not ideal. We've seen him make some plays in that situation this year. And so we've been like, okay, he can make some plays when he gets out of the pocket when things don't go right. But we know that typically, and I think this is the case for both McDaniel and Tua, okay, is that the adjustment part when things go wrong, whether it's because of what you're talking about, Lewis, which is getting punched in the mouth and team being overly physical, or just the circumstances of the game, they're not great in those situations. I think there's enough of a sample size here to say the two of them are not great. I also think that to say today is on Tua, look, the pick was awful. Okay. Like he didn't read that play properly. That ball probably shouldn't even have been thrown. Okay. And he's always good for one of those. And it's just whether he gets away with it or not. And today he didn't get away with it. And it's like I said, if you end up in a situation, it's like a tennis match. If you don't hold serve against a team like that, the team goes the other way. My bigger concern for this team right now, and it's kind of what Chris is mentioning about the injuries, but it's beyond that, psychologically, okay? Because that matters. This team, I think, has gotten, too caught up in the noise, okay? Like, it's for us to care about what the media is saying about them, not for them, okay? Like, we get caught up in it 5 reasons about everything. But here, look, the Dolphins today showed they are what everybody said they were. That's the thing. And so I feel like, and the Hard Knocks thing plays into this. I've enjoyed it. It's entertaining, etc. But it feels like they've gotten caught up in that stuff too much this year. And so I think that's a big negative. And now they're going to hear it the other way because they're going to hear that they can't beat a team like Buffalo. They're going to be dealing with a week like that. And they are looking at their season potentially having a crashing thud after all the positivity. Because if you lose a game like this, then you lose on your home field against Buffalo. Okay. They wouldn't be in this position, by the way, if they just closed the damn thing against Tennessee. If they lose this game against Buffalo and then they got to go up to Buffalo and they get beat up against Buffalo, they've made no progress. This whole season then is for nothing. Like it's just the whole down the drain again at the end of it, regardless of whether someone said they'd be 11-6 and win a playoff game or not. So, psychologically, they got to figure out how to be tougher. I think. I think we talk about physicality, but I like today, like just the fact that Tua throws one pick before the half, we shouldn't all be saying game's over. But none of us thought they were coming. But Lewis, you didn't think they were coming back after that, right?
No,
like I didn't see it.
I knew the game was over. Ethan, I turned the game off. I followed it through the OnlyFins. By the way, $3 a month, best Dolphins talk you'll ever have. You should mention that, by the way. But either way, I followed it from OnlyFins. I didn't watch the rest of the game. I got a play-by-play through text from the chat room, and I couldn't watch it. I could not watch it.
Well, I watched most of it from the sports bar where people were rooting for the Eagles up here. For some reason, it turned into an Eagles bar about halfway through, and that didn't go so well for them either. But I just, and I'll pivot back to both of you guys on this stuff. Like, I think that, okay, Tua and McDaniel are going to have to figure out how to get things done when things don't go right. I just think that's and one win against Dallas with the way they closed it at the end. I don't think the Cowboys are great to begin with. Right. It to me was not enough to settle that argument. Like to say, okay, they're all of a sudden they can beat these kind of teams. I don't think the Cowboys are great anyway. You had the game at home. You couldn't finish those drives, et cetera, et cetera. My thing is this, okay? If Tyreek Hill claims he's the best receiver in the league or whatever, 2,000-yard receiver, got to make that catch in the end zone. Can't have the mistakes he's had against Philadelphia, Kansas City, and these guys in Baltimore here. Tua again can't have that one throw that you just like. What the hell is that? Like I don't think it's as much about him not getting out of the pocket. It's just like he's in the pocket. We know how accurate he is. So why does he have that brain fart every game? Like he got away with a couple of them against Dallas. But he didn't get away with it today. Chris, on this, and again, we're getting more of the comments that are coming in here. 1-4 against teams with 500 record, however you want to put lipstick on a pig. A lot of teams are under 500 against teams with an above 500 record. The Dolphins just haven't played a lot of them. Okay, so that's a big part of this. But this Kansas City game, I had no problem with their effort. Philadelphia game, I thought they competed, and I thought they got screwed by the officials, to be honest. This game was a disaster. it just kind of shows to me they've gone backwards a little bit, and I'm a little afraid, Chris, of them feeling sorry for themselves this week. And again, hearing the noise, getting caught up in the fact that Buffalo caught them, and I don't know. I don't have a great feeling about next Sunday, to be honest.
As far as next Sunday, yeah, I'm up in the air on whether or not I even want to watch. But I'm of that age where I've seen these Dolphins collapses before. But again, I'm going to look for a little positivity here. The Baltimore Ravens are the best team in the league. They just beat the second best team in the conference. And I think we could easily say that maybe they didn't play like it today, but the Dolphins are the second best team in this conference. They beat the best team, the number 1 seed in the other conference on their turf. And shellacked them pretty well also. So it just wasn't meant to be today for that. To your point about, I think they've got to come up with some counter punches. It seems like that they have kind of a Madden playbook where it's like they've got, 8 or 9 plays that they will call from, and that seems to be it. And they don't seem to have a counter to what some of these other teams will likely do. So it hurt that Waddle wasn't in there because he takes a lot off of a defense in the same way that Hill does. And when they're both out there, it's tough to defend the Dolphins. Achane did his part today. They just haven't had a guy step up. Having Mostert out hurt. But at some point, it's got to be, listen, we're going to call a play action where Tua has to turn his back to the defense, fake the handoff, then turn around and not be worried about him getting sacked immediately. And that's kind of how this game felt to me today was. And Baltimore is not necessarily, they don't have elite edge players.
But they have the most sacks in football.
Well, they are it's a team effort kind of deal, and they get to the quarterback fast. But they don't have a guy like Micah Parsons who is like, well, we've got to absolutely block this guy at all costs. And I would agree with Alan's comment there that it's a little bit of a gimmicky style offense. They need to be able to run some typical NFL plays that we see any other team run. I mean, Tua can throw to the boundary. We've seen him do it. Throw to the sideline. He's not going to be a guy that's going to throw a 15-yard out to the opposite hash on a rope. That's just not who he is. But they've got to come up with some kind of counter punch. And early in the year,
Chris, to that point though, I want to jump in and go back to you on it, because we heard a lot about because that comment about the middle of the field, right? Like this was the thing. Like last year it was the Chargers, I think, that squeezed them that way, and then there was a lot of conversation about that before the game this year. Like I love Mike. Okay, I think we all respect Mike and what he's done here, and from a roster management and personality management more so than anything else. He's brought life to the program. He's given confidence to players, regardless whether you think he's funny or not, or he's eccentric or whatever. I don't think anybody can argue Mike hasn't done a good job here. They got into the playoffs 2 straight years. But with that being said, like he's a genius, right? He's had a year to figure out this squeezing the middle of the field stuff. And I still don't feel like they have an answer. And at a certain point, if you don't have an answer for it, then we do have to start to look at the quarterback and whether or not he thinks the quarterback can provide that answer. Because it seems to me like that's how I would play the Dolphins all the time. Just squeeze the short stuff, squeeze the middle of the field stuff. Tua can throw the ball deep, but you're right. They don't trust the offensive line enough for them to do so. I'm looking at the long I'm looking at the long gains today, right? Longest gain of the day for the Dolphins in the passing game was Tyreek, 25 yards. Smythe, 22. A-Chain, 23, which he did most of that himself. Cedric Wilson, who had a nice catch today. I think they should use him more. 19 was his long, and Ingold had 18, right? Okay, that was another short pass, okay? There was no stretch in the field today like that. And they've stretched the field when Waddle or Hill has been out before. We've talked about their numbers have been excellent. Tua's numbers have been excellent with Hill on the sideline when he's had just Waddle, and vice versa. Then you go on the other side. I mean, the Ravens, this was just a bleep show, but like the Ravens had, the Zay Flowers obviously had the 75-yarder, but likely 35. Beckham 33. Justice Hill 23. I mean, they had 5 gains actually, because one of them had 2 of them, more so than anything that the Dolphins did today. He's got to figure that out. Like he's got to. If he doesn't trust Tua to do it, then we got a problem. But like you cannot play in this situation where you're basically in an airplane aisle. Like they're just going to crowd the airplane aisle. They're just throwing carts in the airplane aisle. They're not letting anybody get through there. They're throwing the extra safety in there. They're creeping up to the line of scrimmage, and they're basically saying, "Listen, Tua wants to get the ball out in 2 seconds. Fine. This is all you're going to get. This is it." Can they fix that with the current quarterback is my question, because I'm a fan of Tua. People know that, but can they fix it with him there?
Well, the start, number one, is there's probably, I'll say this, there's probably only 1 or 2 defenses in the league that can limit the middle of the field the way that Miami likes to attack. This is not something that just everybody can do. That they have the speed at linebacker. And I know Hamilton didn't play today, but you've got guys like that. You look at San Francisco and what they did last year. They have the speed and the athleticism at linebacker to not just fall for the play action, but they can retreat and get depth to take away some of these. So is Buffalo that team next week? I don't know. I mean, their safeties are older. I don't know how well they've been playing this year. They've lost their starting linebacker. So starting middle linebacker. So I think there will be some plays to be made in the middle of the field. So again, it's not a situation where it's like, oh, well, everyone can do this, because if everyone could do it, everyone would have, and they just can't. But the other thing is they need to have some other plays that they can to do whenever teams can take that away. So, for example, and I've got the all-22. I haven't watched much of it this year, but have you guys seen them throw like a comeback route, like where it's just the guy on the outside runs and then does a comeback, I don't know what you call it. I just call it a comeback route, a curl, hook, whatever. You just don't seem to see those type of throws. And again, Tua's not the guy who's going to drop back on a 7-step drop and sling a if you do the math, a 15-yard out route is somewhere like a 30 to 40-yard throw through the air, from the top of the drop to the ball catch point. If you aim it to the sideline, he's just not a guy that's going to throw it 20 yards on a rope like that, and that's fine. You don't necessarily have to do that. And we know he can throw the ball deep. We know he can and make these certain passes. I think they've just become too reliant on these, and they don't have those plays. And I don't know if it's a situation where they don't run them, or what. I know there was one play, I can't remember. I've been sick all week, and I was out, and while I'm sitting there in the bed sick, I'm watching Dolphins games from earlier in the year, and there's one similar to a back shoulder throw. A comeback is basically where you get a certain coverage, the receiver runs it, and either angles back to the sideline or cuts in, but it's not a full running route. So he doesn't continue doing a back shoulder. Is more of the play is still going, in my opinion. There was one that was called back due to a penalty. I don't remember what game it was, but Hill runs that route, and Tua throws it. He has to throw it with anticipation and have to throw it on time because he doesn't have a huge arm to zing it in there. But he does that. Now the play didn't count because of a holding penalty on somebody, but it still gets there. And then when they get in a situation like today, you just don't see that. You just don't see that those type of plays. It tends to be I hate to use the word scared, but it's almost like a scared play calling. Like, well, we're going to throw these little screen passes. We're going to throw this, and we're going to throw these certain type of plays. And when the other team kind of sniffs it out, like the Ravens did today, you're kind of like, where do we turn to? And obviously, he didn't trust the offensive line enough to say, hey, we're going to run some heavy play action. We're going to go with a 7-man protection, or we're going to go with any of these type of, you guys remember the throw that Chad Henne made to Ted Ginn against the Jets on the Monday night game? That was a max protect 2-man route. I didn't see any of that today, at least, not from parts of the game that I was watching.
Well, Chris, it seems like, and I'll let Lewis close here, and I appreciate everybody getting their thoughts off here. It seems like they have two routes. They have different route trees, but obviously they're based off the same. The branches all come from these two things. Okay, it's either horizontal, so it's these screens, these quick hits. I mean, essentially horizontal throws, or it's like we saw against Dallas on 2 straight plays with, again, Tyreek dropped one in that game too. He dropped the first one. They went right back to Waddle. Or it's the drop back and just gun it deep. Okay? Like that's it. Run a 9 route. Okay. Safety's there, safety's not there, whatever. Tua can make that throw. That's the throw he's been criticized for the most. That one he makes. Like that, I'm confident. When he throws the ball deep, I'm comfortable with it. It's the other stuff that they're not getting to, right? It's the and then when you add to the fact that what Lewis is talking about this inability to kind of extend the plays, right, with the legs. So you don't have that whole intermediate route tree. Like you don't have, like you're talking about, the back shoulders, the zip it 18 yards on the deep slants, okay, or that kind of stuff. They don't either trust the line or they don't trust him, or both, to make those throws. So you basically, if you're scouting this team now, you're like, all right, look, obviously, you look at the play that Tyreek hit on the 4th and 3, against Dallas, right? Where they got the 10 yards and they, McDaniel said, it's this time to do this. Everybody's seen the clip by now, right? And don't look at Tyreek and look at Berrios and then make the throw to Tyreek. Those quick hitters, fine. Tua is fine on those. The drop back and just gun it deep over the top of the defense, he can make those throws. But I think that these teams are looking at that 15 to 25 yard range. This way, this way, this way, and saying, okay, we're not afraid of them doing that. They're afraid of throwing it. And I think it's more about, I know people here in the comments want to say it's all Tua. I agree. I think it's more about the line. I think that McDaniel has been coaching around the line the whole year because he doesn't know who he has. now I think at the point where they can't really adjust to it and they don't know how to make those throws. And I'll tell you, a couple guys have busted. The Chase Claypool thing hasn't worked. I think that's been, I know what they were trying to do there, but obviously he has not made any kind of an impact. It's enough weeks now to know. Cedric Wilson's made a few plays for them. I think they should utilize him more, but it can't be a situation where, and then Durham Smythe, they got him involved. Like he does pretty decent things. They don't involve him enough. Lewis, you close here.
All I'm going to say is that for all the talk about load management and all the talk about how we want trying to protect players from themselves, quite frankly, this team needs to get these players out there. If Teron Armstead, who is constantly on one leg and one knee, one foot, one hand, one eye, whatever you want to say, something's about him is hurting constantly. He's out there and he's playing left tackle. Not always to the best of his ability, but he's out there. How bad was Robert Hunt's injury that he goes out there and practices and Mike McDaniel still tells him he can't go out there and play? Where is Robert Hunt right now? Robert Hunt needs to be playing. Austin Jackson came back from his injury. He's playing. Where is Robert Hunt? The best offensive lineman on this team has been missing for the past 4 or 5 weeks. Out of what? An excess of caution? There are many things about Mike McDaniel that I like. This is one of the things right now I disagree with him on. Football is not basketball. There are not 100+ games in the season. You only have so many opportunities to make an impact. If your player is healthy enough to get on his 2 legs and move, he needs to be out there. Unless Robert Hunt is hobbled and is limping everywhere he goes, he needs to be out there. Kyle Hamilton did not play for the Ravens today because he could not move properly. He was limping. He was hobbled. You could tell he wasn't moving properly. Where has Robert Hunt been this whole time? He practiced. He did more practice this week than the other week so far. All we heard is that he can't play. Why? Tell me why. And mind you, I didn't play the game. So anybody can say, oh, well, you don't know what it's like. You're right. I don't. But doggone it, man. There are a lot of other analysts out there. And there are other football players who are now analysts who have said, listen, sometimes you just got to suck it up and deal with it. Get out there and play for your team. Am I wrong about that?
It goes back to the old. I was going to say it goes back to the old Parcellsism. It said there's a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. So if you're injured, that's one thing. If you're not letting them play because they're a little hurt, I kind of see your point, Lewis. I mean, at some point, you're holding them for what? You've got two games guaranteed left. I mean, you can't hold them to next season. So
I want to see Waddle try to go this week too. I want to see him try at
Waddle
least.
Needs to play. Mostert needs to play. Hunt needs to play. Everybody who is able
can play, should play.
Correct. Enough is enough. Next week.
I'm with you.
Is the start of the playoffs.
I'm with you at this point, and I understand what Jack Daniels is saying here. Already is you think you know better than the team medical staff. I get that. We've had the same debate on the Heat side because they've adopted a very similar policy, it seems, to the Dolphins on this, as far as holding guys out if they're not like 75% or better. But it comes down to this. It's one thing to talk about the Heat in late December when the season isn't over till the middle of April. It's another thing to talk about the Dolphins here when literally this is a 1-game season right now. Like I mean, let's be right about it. They ain't winning a road playoff game. I'm sorry, not up in Buffalo. You need to win this game on Sunday. That's it.
No, Ethan, it's worse. It's worse. If Miami wins next week, they'll play at home against the Buffalo Bills more than likely. If they lose, they go to the wild card in Kansas City.
Yeah.
It's at that point it's done. You might as well not even show up. It's not going to happen.
Well, honestly, I feel better about them in KC than Buffalo, but that's a whole nother conversation. I think it's this. I don't see this team winning a road playoff game. I just don't. I don't. To me, this was about they are a different team at home. The offense was flawless at home until recently. And actually, Jack, I have talked to Spo about it on the side. I don't always do anything publicly, but I've had these conversations with him about why they've managed certain things, and I don't think necessarily we agree on all that. And we've talked about that on the podcast as well. But I'll just say that they need to get as many of these guys out there as they can. I'm with you because there's nothing to hold back for. Look, obviously the guy is risking long-term injury, but let me ask you this: we've seen 2 long-term injuries on this team this year, right? It appears. Hopefully not today, but it looks like it, right?
Bradley
Jalen
Chubb
Phillips and Bradley Chubb.
and Jalen Phillips, yeah.
They were not. I mean, it wasn't because they were thrown out on the field while they were hurt.
Connor
right?
Williams, we're third. There's 3.
Third one. It's not because they've been thrown out there because they were banged up and the team pushed them out there. I mean, literally, Phillips and Chubb got hurt at the end, non-contact injuries at the end of games that were decided. Okay, guys can get hurt at any time. My thing is, I think Mostert probably wanted to play today. I don't know all the details on it. My guess is he will play next week. I understand why you're trying to protect the Waddle investment right now, and obviously, a receiver needs his ankles to be in pretty decent shape. But if he can give you 75% as a 70%, 60% as a decoy next week, get him in a uniform. Because I'll tell you this: Chase Claypool 100% isn't doing what Jalen Waddle's doing at 60. So you get him out on the field, and I'm with you about Robert Hunt. They dressed Robert Hunt a couple weeks ago, didn't they? And then he didn't end up playing. So that's been a weird one the whole way. Anyway, disappointing deal here. And Chubb get paid on the sidelines. Look, they might have Chubb and Jalen Phillips. I didn't want to think about it. Today was just a really, really, really bad day. All right, Lewis, Duke, we appreciate it. We appreciate all the commenters, even if we don't agree. We'll have plenty of content coming up to the Bills game next week. Also, check out our podcasts. Of course, 3 Yards Per Carry, All Dolphins podcast. Make sure that you download those. And I'm sure, Lewis, you're back this week, right? With
Biz Nation will
Fins
be showing
Nation.
up at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning. So for all of those of you who are not hungover from New Year's / Dolphins loss syndrome, I will be available for you guys.
All right, Fins Nation will be up there too. Pulse of Fins Nation, all of our content. You can check it out. Extra Yard, Alex Dono and Troy Stratford too. We've got plenty of Dolphins content on the channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. 1 game season next week, guys. Have a good one.